Today is October 4th, 2024. My name is Advika Rajiv, and I'm with the Houston Asian American Archive. I'm talking today with Dr. Bandula Wijay, an inventor of cardiovascular medical devices and a founder of several medical technology companies. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you.
To start, can you please state your full name and where and when you were born?
Well, my name is Bandula Wijay, W-I-J-A-Y. I was born in Sri Lanka in June 1946. So right now I'm about 79 years old. And yeah, next question.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your household growing up?
Well, I was in a household where my parents were school teachers. They were school principals in local schools. I had two sisters, and elder sister was a school teacher. My second sister was a banker, and I was the youngest.
That's awesome. What values did your parents emphasize in you and your siblings growing up?
The most important value is to be ethical, do the right thing, and work hard. And I think these were the most important values that they try to teach me, even while I was a child or when I was an adult. The same thing. Yes.
That's amazing. Are there any lessons from them that you brought into raising your own two children?
Yes, I have two sons. They are grown up. One is 46, the other one is 38. So they are both grown up. They have their own children. I have grandchildren.
What was your neighborhood in Sri Lanka like when you were a kid?
So basically, I was not from a town. I was from a village. My village is not too far from the city. So I was like 3 miles from the city, but 3 miles a long distance those days. And so I grew up in kind of a country environment where we grew a lot of stuff, vegetables and stuff, and we were among a lot of paddy fields. So we didn't own paddy fields, but we had some people sold their products to us and so on. So we grew up in sort of like a agricultural environment. But I did go to the city school, which is 3 miles away, which is quite a well-known high school in Sri Lanka. And I went from 3rd grade to high school in that school called Mahinda College, or Mahinda Vidyalaya, it's the Sri Lankan pronunciation. So I had a very good life growing up. My school life was wonderful.
That's awesome. Since you mentioned schooling, I was wondering, were there any teachers or experiences during this early schooling that inspired you academically or non-academically?
So I after the 8th grade, I got into the sort of science stream. So I was one of the students in the science stream. And I was very fortunate to have a few great teachers. And those teachers made a big impact on my life and lives of a lot of other students in the school. So we grew up trying to learn the basic and the fundamentals of science, and trying to understand that knowing it and learning it properly means a lot in how you practice eventually when you grow up and when you go to work. So that they made a really big impact in my life and the life of a lot of other kids. And I was a lot of a hands-on type of person at the time when I was growing up in school. So I did a lot of hands-on type of things. Pretty much the same things that I have done the rest of my life, is just being hands-on in developing the various things I have developed, just mainly because I've been very practical and hands-on.
That's really great to hear that they cultivated that interest in you while you were young. Were your parents supportive of your interests early in life, or did they push you towards any specific field of study?
Well, my parents always insisted that I study well and study hard and achieve the goals that I have set for myself. And they want to make sure that I followed through. So in that sense, yes, they were persuasive. Plus, they themselves were teachers, and therefore they knew the value of education. So my household is like, yeah, you better study and you know do well in school. That sort of mentality, that environment exists throughout my life until I left home. Yes.
When you were a kid, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up?
I want to be a scientist, and I want to be a medical doctor or an engineer. So I had this option of doing this or the other, and I did go into the medical stream to start with, but then I switched to engineering after high school.
That's amazing. Um, do you have a favorite childhood memory that stayed with you?
I do. So when I was, I think I was in the 12th grade or 11th grade, something like that. one of the things that happened in about the 6th grade was that the teacher insisted that we talk to each other in English so that we can improve our English. So there was a penalty if we spoke anything but English. So that was this teacher. Interestingly, he is related to my mother, some sort of an uncle to me, and so and he really made a big change in the way we grew up. And this, so they forced us to learn English. That was in the 6th grade. So then about the 11th grade, I think 11 or 12th grade, I don't remember exact grade. Uh, I was awarded, I participated in a science exhibition. So I built something and I presented it and I got the first prize in that thing. So I always remember that I was hands-on. I built things and uh, things that are sort of innovative stuff. So that I always remember those kind of things that happen. And other things in my life, I was a Boy Scout, I was a troop leader. So a lot of things that we did in Boy Scouts, went camping and places that we visited and all that sometimes come to my head when I'm alone and think about the past. These things pop up in my head. And so I remember those things, yes.
Thank you for sharing. Did you travel a lot when you were younger?
Yes, so my parents were teachers, therefore they were employees of the government. And because they were employees of the government, they have this train pass that allows them to make trips basically free of charge for them and their family. So because of that, we went all over Sri Lanka by train. And once you get to a major city or station by train, the rest of the part of the trip can be by bus or by a taxi or car. So we did travel all over the country while we were little because they had this train pass, but not outside of the country.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Um, what influenced your decision to move and then stay in the United States?
Well, first I got a scholarship to study in India. So my basic degree is from India. And first I went to a university called Jadavpur University in Calcutta. And I did my undergraduate there, chemical engineering, and I graduated from there. Then I applied to the school, they're called IITs, and I applied to IIT and I got admitted to IIT Kanpur. So I went to study in Kanpur. I did not complete my education at IIT Kanpur, and I had reasons. My mother passed away meanwhile, and my father was alone. A lot of things happened back home. So after I think about 2 semesters, I went back to Sri Lanka and I started working there for a short time. And then I had the opportunity to come to the United States. I was awarded the Fulbright scholarship. I was one of 3 people that year who got the scholarship. So then I came to the US in 1974. I had the opportunity to go to various schools, and I didn't know too much about the United States at the time. So I asked somebody where I worked who has been to the United States and got educated where I should go. I was thinking of like MIT, Colorado School of Mines, and then something somewhere in Southern California, USC. And he said, go to USC, the weather is very good. You will feel very comfortable. So, and I had no idea. And said, okay, I'm going to USC. I told the US, I think IIE is the name of the institute that handles the Fulbright scholarship. So I told them, I'm going to USC. They asked me to apply for admission. USC gave me admission. So I ended up coming to USC. So once I arrived in the United States, I realized that USC is it's a great school, it's an elite school, and all that good stuff. So I said, okay, I lucked out. so, so I did my education at USC. I entered, I did my master's in chemical engineering, and then I enrolled in the PhD. And while I was doing my PhD in chemical engineering, I enrolled in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, and I did a master's in mechanical engineering on the side, and I got that degree on the side. And then I graduated in chemical engineering, I think in 1978.
Wow, that's amazing. When you first moved to the US or to India, were there any like major challenges that you faced?
Well, going to India, going to India was a bit of a challenge in the sense, we had little cultural differences, and the food was the biggest challenge because I was not used to the kind of food in that area of India. But I got adapted to it fairly quickly. And because of this history between India and Sri Lanka, there's some sort of a story from way back when that talks about Ravan and so on. So that kind of influenced me a little bit. But after everybody got friendly with me, that went away. So we were like brothers then after that. And coming to the United States, then I was 6 years more mature, right? And then I came in and no, not a problem. I just got an apartment and started living in an apartment. I walked to class. It's about half a mile, I think about a mile walk to class. These are graduate level courses. They were always in the night. So we go there, I think about 6 o'clock and walk home by 9 o'clock. So it wasn't a huge cultural shock coming to the US. Well, the only other thing was we had to cook ourselves. That's the only difference. So there was nobody to cook for you. We learned how to cook.
You mentioned that you moved to LA when you first moved to the US. Were you able to find a strong Sri Lankan community in LA?
Interesting question. Actually, when I moved in 1974, there were like 9 families. There were only like 9 families, okay? And today, I don't think you can count the number of families there. It's so huge. People don't know each other. But those days, 9 families. Of the 9 families, I was one. So there were other 8 families. There was another student from Sri Lanka who was doing chemistry. So he was the other family. So there were 7 families outside of us. So it's a very small community. So we got to know each other quickly because he had some connections with somebody. And when he connected with that person, that allowed me to connect with that person and then the community as a whole. So we were well received by these families, and we still continue to have a relationship with some of those families. Some of them are no longer there, but there are a few who are still alive, and we communicate regularly with them.
Yeah, that sounds like a really tight-knit community. Building off of what you just mentioned, what are some changes that you've noticed in the US from when you moved to present day?
The biggest change that I noticed was the education system. The education system in the United States, not only having got most of my education here in the US, but also having been an entrepreneur and built several companies and being a professor for almost 7 or 8 years, one of the most remarkable things in America is the education system. Uh, I always, in my speeches, when I'm asked to give a speech, I always tell about this story. That means this education system is totally unparalleled to any other education system anywhere else in the world, including the developed countries, including the Western Europe or China and Japan. This education system is very different. And this is the reason why America has progressed, is because of our education system. We don't teach kids, we make kids learn. That's a huge difference. In Sri Lanka and India, because I was in India, you teach the kid, you teach in class. But here, you go to class as a professor. I would entice the kids to learn. And the process, when the kids learn, they become better in practicing what they learn. As you know, if you take 100 things that have changed the way humanity exists today, the way we live life. If you pick 100 things, 99 of those things were invented in the United States. Okay, the fact that you and I are talking on internet with the Zoom connection, this was done in the United States, not by the highly educated people, bright, brilliant people somewhere else. Now, granted, some of these things were invented by the people like me who have immigrated to this country, who have adopted this system. And therefore, that's how a person like me and others who have used their skills to come up with these new ideas. So you name it, it is from the transistor to the microwave oven to all these various things were invented and developed in the United States. The only reason is how we educate our students. Because when these students, they learn to learn, they go back outside to the outside world, they learn to learn to learn in order to produce something that is disruptive. Okay. I remember in my older days, somebody asked me the other day, how often did you talk to your father? And I said, I used to write letters, and he used to reply me in letters. Now, a letter takes about a week or two to go, and another letter takes a week or two to come. And a phone call was like $3-4 a minute. So 10-minute phone call, we could not afford as students. But today, with the WhatsApp, you just can talk to people around the world, right? How did that happen? That innovation came from here, granted from people who came from other countries, but it happened here through this system. And that is what I admire in the American system, the American education, what the America has given me.
That's a very fascinating perspective about like the difference in teaching content and teaching how to learn. So
Yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
sharing. Were
When I
there
get in
any
front of a
important?
class, when I get in front of a class, I intentionally don't tell them this stuff. What is subject matter, I don't tell them. Even the very first day, first class, as I see my students, I ask a question. What is the answer to that question? Through that question, I indoctrinate what I want to tell them. This is my way of thinking. And there are a lot of teachers like that in the United States, majority. Please, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for sharing your teaching philosophy. That's very cool. Were there any important people who helped you during your transition as a new immigrant to the US?
Yes. So after the first year or so was kind of sort of like anybody else, eventless. There was a host family that we met every so often. They invited out to their house for dinner, and they were very nice, and they were always advising us about America and what we should learn from them. So they were very useful. But I think my teachers, my professors, made a huge impact on my life. Not only that, they gave me the chance to work on some areas that are so important, but also the way they encourage us to excel in what we do. So not just do something enough to satisfy the need, but do the best you can so that you excel in what you're trying to do. I think that character was instilled in us by our teachers, our professors at USC.
Thank you for sharing. You mentioned about the education system, but did you see any differences between the scientific communities in all the places you've lived and worked at?
Well, when I was in Sri Lanka, I worked in the most premier institute for scientific research in Sri Lanka. And I was a research officer, that's my title. And so I worked with a lot of other scientists. Most of them were educated in the United States, so they got their PhDs in the US, maybe a few from places like Switzerland or Germany. But most of that higher senior staff were educated here. So we worked again over there. I worked on very practical things. So my work was very much appreciated by the senior management, what I was able to produce. So as far as that, when I went to work here, I did not go into scientific research environment like a research lab. I went to work for a company in more of practical development. So I work with engineers, not so much scientists who were doing fundamental research. While in Sri Lanka, I work with people who were trying to do fundamental research. But here, when I went to work, I work with myself, with engineers, what we are trying to make something happen with existing known knowledge. We use the known knowledge to make something. So in that sense, my experience here is not so much with the scientific community, it's more on the medicine and engineering. I work with doctors and engineers. So that's where my life from that 1978 to today, my life is working with them, not so much with the scientific community.
I see, that makes sense. Did you face any discrimination after moving to the US?
Absolutely not. I think there is, I don't see that, I never faced any sort of discrimination because I'm a foreigner or because I'm an immigrant. I'm not a foreigner anymore, but I was a foreigner at the time. Because I'm an immigrant or I'm different skin color, I never felt that. But in the first place, wherever I went, I was at the very top, right? So it's very hard to discriminate somebody at the top because most people are working for me, right? So it's hard for your employees to discriminate your boss. So I don't know whether this exists in another situation, but in my situation, I did not say. My employees, whether they are white or black or brown, they loved me for what I do, how I treated them. So I never felt that. So
That's amazing. That's really nice to hear. You mentioned that you received a Fulbright scholarship to pursue higher education in the US. What's your opinion on study abroad opportunities and moving to different countries for education?
Sri Lankans go to different countries. They mainly go to the UK, and some now go to Australia, but most of the people go to UK. Some people, few people come to the United States at that time. Now that has changed. I think now you see more and more people coming to the United States. And I do not know how many people go to the UK because I don't live there anymore. So I'm not privy to that information. But I was lucky. The year that I got the Fulbright scholarship, I also got the Commonwealth scholarship to go to England. So I chose to take the Fulbright and not the Commonwealth. So I came here. Why I did that, I don't know. It's just, okay, I'm good American out here. So,
That's awesome. Did your vision for your future or your career change while you were in college?
when you say college, you mean college here, like in the university here? So my future, uh, where I am today, is fairly accidental. When I was doing my PhD, I work on these things called highly filled system. Highly filled systems is we have a binder like rubber, and inside this binder you get 95 to 98% solid, which can be any kind of thing. Why this is important is the rocket fuels, for example, you see the flame coming down and the rocket is going up. That what is inside that is a rocket fuel. That rocket fuel is 98, 95 to 98% the fuel, solid fuel, and it's held in place by the binder, which is 2 to 3% of that. So this is very important because it's like you go to the beach and you take sand and make a tube and you try to hold it from the top, it breaks, right? It doesn't have strength. But in the rocket, it's held in the top, it's burning at the bottom, so therefore it has to have some strength, otherwise it will fall, break and fall apart. So this is a very important study. So I studied this. This is my area. I did this, and that's what I did towards my PhD. And I made a presentation in one of the local meetings, and at the lunchtime, I had lunch, and there was a little round table. There were a few other people at the lunch, and I overheard these people talking about a problem that they have. So this guy who has the problem is telling the other guys, "Hey, we have been working on this and this. What do you think? What can be done?" That sort of question, the conversation. And after I finished the lunch and they left, I went and talked to the guy who has the problem and said, "Hey, uh, I overheard it. I'm sorry, but based on what you guys were talking, maybe the solution is something like this or something like that." And he said, "Oh yeah." And a couple of weeks later, I got a call from this guy. And those days there were no cell phones. This phone in the house, and hey, my boss wants to talk to you about this. I said, okay, well, so I got into my car. I drove from USC to Irvine, and I met with his boss. And he told me that, oh, you told Ed that you can solve the problem, you know the solution. I said, I think I can help you solve the problem, and you should do this, you do that. And whatever came to my mind, I told him, and he was pretty impressed. And right then and there, he offered me a job. So, within the next, so I was there in his office for about half an hour. 15 minutes later, I had a piece of paper, the job offer, and that the dollar amount is much higher than my scholarship amount. So I went and told my professor, "Hey, I got this offer. What do I do, sir?" And he said, "No worries. You have already finished your work at a PhD. Take the job and write your thesis." So I took the job and started writing my thesis, and I graduated. And I did solve the problem within about 3 months. I solved the problem, and I got started in the medical device field. So it's very accidental. I got into the medical device field. Here I'm working on highly filled systems for my PhD, and yet my work in my life ended up in the medical devices, like the pictures you see in the wall back here. They're all various devices I developed. So the rest is in the rear view mirror. So
Yeah, that's a really impressive story. That's very
It's
interesting.
something to do with luck, I believe. I mean, maybe we shouldn't believe in luck, but in retrospectively looking, maybe there was luck that I fell into this. Although I don't know, maybe if I went to work for an aerospace company or petroleum company, maybe I have done okay. But this turned out to be a very rewarding career for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. What clubs or extracurricular activities did you participate in during college in Sri Lanka, India, or the US?
In India, I played a little bit of cricket because everybody was playing cricket. And once I arrived here in the first few years, I was not involved in any kind of sports. But once I finished, and when especially after, while I was in California working for this company, I worked for them from 79, to 82, 4 years. I was not that much involved in sports. Once I came to Houston, over here, then I started playing tennis. So I played tennis for quite a long time. And so that was the extra sort of thing I did. Uh, Other than that, no, I'm not a super duper athlete. My two sons are athletes, so that's enough.
Thank you. Can you provide a brief timeline of your professional experience?
So I started with this company, and I developed. So there is a very well-known product that is used in cardiovascular medicine called the Swan-Ganz catheter or cardiac output monitoring catheter. So this is the one I got started when I joined them. So I work with Dr. Ganz. The catheter is named after Dr. Ganz. So I work with Dr. Ganz, and in the process, I learned a lot from him. And so that was my first contribution. So that product came out about 78, 79, something like that. It is still in use. So during that time, you probably have heard of balloon angioplasty. This is by using a balloon in the heart to open up the clogged arteries. And that was kind of sort of getting started in the world. The most of the conversation was happening in Europe by a physician by the name Grunzig, and also there was a doctor in Oregon, Dr. Charles Darter. He was also talking about it, and so the race started to make this balloon catheter. So my company, the company I work for, also started this and asked me to be the one in charge to make this product. At the time, we didn't have the knowledge how to do it. So I personally and my engineers uh, had a few engineers in my group. By then, I was the manager of the department, and we tried various things, and we were not having great success. But then all of a sudden, one day, we made something that looks like a balloon, and so when we tested that, it's okay but not okay. So, but the race was going on. In the East Coast of the United States, they were also trying to do, and while this is going on, the balloon development was the key. In order for this catheter to work, you need a good balloon. So at the time, we didn't have a good balloon. So the company also was not super energized to move this project forward. And I left the company and came to work here and work for a different company, different field, still medical device. And I have few inventions for that company. And then one day, I was toying with this idea to make the balloon. And I made a balloon from a different material than the one we were trying in California. And I made that balloon in my kitchen. My wife and I working together. We made that balloon in the kitchen without any tools, instruments. We made the balloon. So I tested the balloon, and my numbers in this balloon were twice as good as the numbers of the balloon I made while I was in California. And I said, I got something here now. I'm going to start. So a couple of weeks later, I went and told my boss and gave my resignation, saying, I'm going to leave the company in order to start a company to do balloons. I gave them 1 year of notice, saying, I'll continue to work for 1 year until you find somebody to fill my shoes. They really appreciated me giving such a long time. They said, okay, we will continue to pay your salary. You can start tomorrow. I mean, they allow me to start my business right away while still working for the company. So they were very nice. So I left, meaning I didn't leave physically. I'm still in the company, but in the nights, in the week, in the afternoons and weekends, I'm making the balloon. So I made the balloon, and I was able to make a prototype catheter. And then I went to these medical congresses like American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association meeting. And I was there in one of the meetings, and I was looking for a chair, I have to say it. All the chairs are taken. And there was this one empty chair. And I said, okay, let me. So I had to go through, like in a movie theater, go through the various people and eventually take a seat in this one empty chair. Then the woman next to me, I looked at her bag, and she's from Houston. I said, oh, you're from Houston? She said, yes. I said, I'm working on something like this. Who are the top cardiologists in Houston who will be interested in what I'm trying to do? So she gave me like 6 names. I said, now give me the grades, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So she said, okay, number 1 is this, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. So I came back to Houston, and I called the number 6 guy, and I went and met him. I told him what I want to do. And he said, that's great. It's very good. And in that conversation, he also taught me a lot of things I didn't know. So he educated me. Then I went and met the number 3 guy, and I was able to make a better presentation to the number 3 guy. And he was very impressed. And he showed, hey, yeah, this is great. We should do it. Then I went to see the number 1 guy. I made a call, made an appointment, went to somebody. And I made the presentation. I have written the patent and applied the patent already, okay? So I take a copy of my patent and I gave it to him. And he reached out to his cabinet, in his bookshelf. He pulled out a document and gave it to me. When I opened the document, he's talking about the same thing, what I'm talking about. So our minds met right immediately. He wants to do what I want to do. So the science of this is, when you put a balloon into the heart, into the clogged artery, when you inflate the balloon, you block the blood supply going into the artery. And when that happens, the heart becomes what is known as ischemic. The patient feels a lot of pain, and his EKG changes. His EKG goes wild, and in our terms, we call the ST segments go up. So therefore, the doctor has to deflate the balloon quickly. So by doing this, our method, we are taking blood from the patient and using a pump that is a picture of it here, and there's a model here. We pump to the other side of the lesion, of the clot. And the patient's heart is supplied with oxygenated blood. Patient is not in pain. And the doctor can keep the balloon inflated for a long time. So with this concept that I came up with, and the doctor I met, his name is Dr. Paolo Angelini, he had the similar thought. Mine is a little bit more advanced because I'm doing it with a pump. He was trying to do it with a syringe, which is not as good as doing it with a pump. So our minds met, and we formed a company called Leoco, And this company, we were the 4 companies in the world in angioplasty, and the only company in the world doing this perfusion with the pump. So we got a very significant coverage in that arena, where everybody, whether it is United States, Europe, Japan, China, South America, everybody knew the word Leoco because this is what Leoco does. So we became well known very quickly, and we built that company. We had like 75 employees, and we had pretty good sales, and we had it from 1982 to 1997, and we sold that company in 97. While this was going on, the stents came into. You have heard of stents, right? So the doctor in here by the name Palmer and another doctor in San Diego, California, called Schatz, they came up with the stent concept. So this stent was developed. It was very short, 8 millimeters in length, and it would not go through the tortuosity of this coronary arteries. It was difficult to take it and to place it in the right place. And so therefore you needed a longer, flexible stent. Not 8 millimeter, you need something like 20 to 25 millimeter long, and something that is flexible so it can go through the curves of the artery. Then again, the race started, like the race in 1979. The race started, there were others working on it. They came up with some. I came up with the concept called the nested loop stent. So I developed the nested loop stent. By that time, the first company is undergoing sales. So I formed a new company to do that. And this patent got issued in 2002. Within a week, the patent was, I was acquired. As soon as the patent was issued, I was acquired by Boston Scientific. The company earlier was also bought by Boston Scientific. This company was also bought by Boston Scientific. So these are the two important main things, but there are a lot of other products that I have done and invented that have it's either in the market or was in the market and acquired by some big company. So my career basically was pretty much dealing with the heart. I haven't gotten out of the heart. So as recent as this year, I developed a new catheter to pace the heart. Those people who have cardiac issues, all of a sudden, a catheter that EMT, emergency technician, or a nurse, or doctor, or anybody can use, put in through the nose, and then pace the heart to get the heart started. So we developed that this year. There's another project that I'm working on right now that also it's a future product that will make a big impact on how people treat heart disease. So my expertise, my involvement has always been in the heart. So that's pretty much my career. There are little other details that are probably not important. Maybe I bored you with it.
No, not at all. It's very cool, like how all of your experiences are still centered around the heart, but you're exploring different facets of it. So I think that's very cool. Going back to what you were talking about developing the angioplasty balloons, did you encounter any unexpected obstacles that required you to change about how you thought about the problem? And as materials and uses for these devices changed over time, like how did the product also change accordingly?
Very interesting question. In the beginning, the making the balloon in the beginning, I think I have to fault myself not thinking in fundamental terms and basic science. I did not think. I just really went into practical things. Okay, if you do this, it might work. If I do this, it might work. If I do this, this might work. That was my thinking. I think that's where I made a mistake. I should have thought in basics and fundamentals. This is what I preach to my students, my workers, people who work with me. But I failed to do that at that time. And that's why I could not develop the balloon while I was in California. Or the balloon I developed is not good enough. But when I came to Houston, maybe I'm another year mature, but then I start thinking more in fundamental terms. How can I make this so that the balloon is strong? The pressure inside the balloon, those days we were shooting for something like 15 atmospheres. That's about 225 psi pressure. Okay. Today, it's almost like 18 atmospheres. The science has advanced. Okay. But I wasn't thinking in a basic way how to do it until I came here. Then I thought the basic way how to do it. Most everything I do, I always think in a fundamental way, in the basic way. So that 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 one lesson I learned from there. So I don't know whether that is the answer you were looking for, but
Thank you for sharing. What were the main characteristics of this medical device that you need to account for when you were building it specifically for public healthcare use?
For the angioplasty, so angioplasty has, our angioplasty has two components. One is the balloon and one is the pump. So pump is the process that allowed the doctor to do the balloon angioplasty with confidence so the patient is not in pain. Patient is electrocardiologically stable. So that allowed him more time to do it slowly, carefully, and leave the balloon inflated for a long period of time. We also found in our research, in clinical research, that with long inflation, the outcome was much better. In other words, those days, 25% to 30% of the inflated angioplasty cases, they reclose. Okay. With this method we are using, we could reduce it to like 5%. That's a huge improvement. So the pump is the one that allowed them to do it. So that's why this combination is what made us quite well known at the time. The doctors who are today may not remember it because they're old, they're young at the time. But that's what made us be recognized or make that contribution. And when it came to the stent, the problem with the stent was because that stent was too short, they had to put 2, 3, 4 stents in order to cover the whole lesion. And that's not good. Whereas with a longer 25 millimeter stent, you can put one stent to cover the whole thing. So that's a huge significant improvement in the stents. So those two are how the practical realization of our work, our contribution to science.
Have you seen any major trends in the medical device industry, and do you have any predictions for the future?
So there are a lot of things going on in medical device industry from head to toe, right? So there are a lot of things that have happened in the medical device industry. And I am not up to date on various other aspects. I'm basically always staying inside this heart area. But other than that, there have been a lot of, one of the areas that I have really admired, and I also have worked in that area, I have a patent too in that area, is that they are using RF energy in the renal artery to ablate, and that will help reduce the blood pressure. I think that's a tremendous contribution to medicine. Okay, so you put a catheter in the renal artery, ablate, and take the catheter out, the patient's blood pressure drops. That's fantastic. So that's one area. The other area that I've seen some interesting work done is for people with congestive heart failure, for several years, I think at least for 10 years, people thought by putting a hole in the wall of the atrium, from the septum between left atrium and the right atrium, there's a wall that is called the septum. And in that you cut a hole and you relieve the pressure from the left atrium. So your ventricle doesn't have to work very hard in order to pump the blood. So I think that concept was later developed. Now they have a one where they can put a stent, and there's another one that can put a stent and has a valve. I think this area is very interesting. I'm also working in this area, and I have a new invention that's going to go into pretty soon in this area. These are very, very important and interesting area. There is a huge number of people, large percentage, who have congestive heart failure. Okay, so the market is huge, and it can be treated with medication to some extent, but it needs some sort of a thing like this in order to resolve it 100%, or at least 100%. Nothing gets done 100%, but yeah, close to 100%. So that is an area that I think is an interesting area. And so I'm also working in that area. So
That's really interesting. You'd mentioned this earlier, but like, what made you want to focus specifically on the heart for medical devices?
oh, like I said earlier, it was an accident. So I met with these guys at that conference. They had a problem of a product that they want to develop to measure the cardiac output. How much does the heart pump every time it pumps out the cardiac output? You measure with a catheter. They need to solve that problem with that catheter. I went and solved the problem, so I fell into this area of cardiovascular devices. And then I found it interesting, so I can do this, I can do that, I can do many things. So then that kept me engaged year after year after year on doing things. Part of that is as an entrepreneur developing the business, of course. Once you come up with the concept, you have a product, you have a prototype, then you spend the rest of several years being entrepreneur trying to make it to the market, right? And during that period, maybe I'm not inventing every day, but I do invent, because even this company I may have formed, Lyoko, other than this patent that I told you about already, I think I have applied for maybe 10 or 15 other inventions in that company. And I have applied for another 10 or 15 inventions beyond that. I think I have about 28 or 30 inventions right now.
Wow, that's very impressive. You've built and worked on, I believe, 4 startups in the medical engineering field. What's the general timeline in building up a company like this until it's absorbed by another company?
So from the time you have a concept to the time you have a product in the market, that timeline is fairly long. So there are several things that you must have in order to make that happen. One is, although you have a great idea, but you need some help, some funding, some partnerships in order to make it happen. So you need to have a thought leader, a flag carrier. Nowadays, the word used is influencer. Widely used word is influencer. So somebody who takes this idea and present it to the world, right? I'm not a cardiologist. I cannot go and present it to the world because I'm not a cardiologist. But you need to find a cardiologist that takes your idea and say, by the way, this idea by Bandula Wijay is this, and present the world. Okay. So you need the sort of the Taylor Swift kind of person to do that. And so finding that person is not easy. Convincing that person is not that easy. Then you need some funding in order to develop this basic concept. You need funding. Funding depends. Sometimes easy, sometimes not. And then you need other people that you need to hire work with in order to develop this concept to actual product. Okay. And once you make an actual product, because it's a medical device, you have to go through all sorts of testing and validations, until it is ready that you can apply to the FDA for approval to be able to sell the product in the market. For angioplasty, which was a class 3 device, and all other devices that I'm talking to are class 3 devices, it's a very long process. First, you have to submit what is known as an IDE, Investigational Device Exemption Application. And they review it and say, okay, this is good enough, you can do the clinicals. 90% of the time, they will say, oh, the data is not good enough, you have to supply us more data, and you have to supply more data. And then they will look at it. And this back and forth goes until they say, okay, you can do clinical investigation. Then you have to convince clinicians around the country, around the world, saying, can you please try it in 20 patients? And they have to think, they think twice before you try a new device, saying, what's going to happen? What can go wrong? Okay, this is a new device. Can I hurt my patient? What am I going to do if I hurt the patient? So it's not that easy to convince a physician in let's say in Munich. Okay, can you try this? So these 20 or 30 centers, they have to do the study. Then you have to collect all the data. Then you have to compile the data and write this nice application called the PMA, pre-market approval, submit to the FDA. And when you do that, they keep asking questions. And you answer questions, it may need more clarification on the clinical study, or maybe more clinical study, or something else. We don't know what they will ask. This whole process takes a long time. So, but there are medical devices which are simpler medical. They say you want to make a syringe needle. You don't have to go through this rigmarole. You make a syringe needle, you supply basic data, and they say, okay, you can sell it. Or if you have something very simple, a saline bag, so these medical devices are categorized into class 1, class 2, class 3. Class 1 is very, very easy. Class 2, little bit difficult, but it's doable. Class 3 is very difficult. Interestingly, all the things that I have done in my career has been class 3 devices. So I went through this whole thing, this rigmarole, in order to get the product out in the market.
You'd mentioned how important people are in this journey. So how did you build a strong leadership team, and what did you consider when hiring people?
So in the first place, I first bonded with Dr. Paolo Angelini. So he and I are partners in this business. And he is one of those influencers or the flag carriers who is visible in the world of cardiology. He's a visible figure. So when he talks, people listen. Okay, and then in order to make this happen, you need to have a support function. So for that, I basically hired young engineers straight out of college. Already I had about, let's say, 4-6 years experience, and I'm a practical guy in the first place. So I was able to teach them how to do things, and they were very enthusiastic in order to make things happen. They work hard, and they adapted the culture of practical innovation, solving problems. So I had like about 10 young engineers I hired, okay? And some of them were regulatory kind of people, like people who do paperwork, and some were actually hands-on guys, some were in quality. So it's a mixture of people. So that building that culture is something that I was able to do, and fortunately, those guys adapted very quickly to that culture. And so we had a very good working relationship with each other, and so we were able to get a high quality product out.
How big of a company was Leocore in terms of the number of employees and more specifically the number of like R&D personnel?
So we had about 75 employees in the R&D. Everybody who was in R&D, we had about 4-5 engineers in R&D. They also played a role in manufacturing. So when there's a problem in manufacturing machine or something like that, our guys who are doing the R&D, they run there and fix the problem. So we had about two people or so in the quality management, and about one senior guy and one below for regulatory work. And we had one person for the clinical coordination, the person who goes to the clinic, to the doctor, collect the data and, do all that kind of stuff. So, each slot needed a person. And I kind of played all the slots when it need be. If it is a European center, I would fly to Munich. I will go meet with the doctor. I'll collect all the data and whatnot. Or I will train the doctor how to use it. And maybe I'll have dinner with him. And so that role I played, especially in the beginning, I did that. But later on, the lady that worked for us also went overseas in Italy and other places. So did that. Locally, she went locally to all the places. As time went on, I was doing more of a CEO work than the engineer work, so that's normal.
I know you mentioned invention-wise, it's important to focus in on the basic science, but after successfully building 4 companies, are there any decisions or strategies you would have approached differently?
Ask me the question again.
Were there any decisions or strategies that you might have done differently for the companies?
I think that even my current project, which is a difficult product to develop, I think more you think in basic terms, better it is for to come up with the solution. But at the same time, when you think in basic terms and say this is the solution, then you also have to think in real life practical terms. The solution that you have come up with, would it have any problems because you did not think about the things that can work around it, So right now the project I'm doing has a lot of those. I thought very basic terms, but you have to be practical in thinking, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if it gets stuck? Okay. What if this the tissue that I'm putting in, if it leaks, what happens? Those things are not in basic science. Basic science says you have to block the flow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm blocked the flow. Now I'm going to use some sort of a membrane to block the flow. Okay. What happens if there is a leak? And this sort of thing. So it's a combination of basic science and practical implications.
Did you know that you wanted to enter entrepreneurship when you were a student?
I don't think I intentionally thought that I want to be an entrepreneur, but in my childhood, also I was a bit of an entrepreneur. I used to sell used newspapers. So, my parents, they buy the newspaper, and after 2 or 3 months, you get a whole stack of newspapers. So I take this and sell it. Those kind of things I did. Specifically as an entrepreneur, no, I did not think that, yes, I grow up, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, because my parents were not entrepreneurs. Now, when it comes to my sons, my 2 sons, they grew up in a household where the father and both father and mother were entrepreneurs. So they obviously inherited some of that character. So no, not in my case.
Nice to hear. Have you been manufacturing the devices in the US or have they been sourced overseas? And
No.
how challenging has it been? Oh, sorry. Um, has it been difficult in recent years to maintain reliable sources of manufacturing?
So in the very first company, I made everything myself. This is not the angioplasty company. There was a company before that. So I made myself here in the US. No labor, nobody to help. Everything was done by me. Then comes Leoco. Leoco, everything was done in the United States. Everything from this is called vertically integrated. That means we buy the resin, the past plastic pellets, and goes out the product. Vertically integrated was done here. The third company was the stent company. I did not cut the stent. It was cut in the US by another company, but I did the design work and the development work here within the company. But the stent was cut locally in the US. Fourth company is the first time we started looking for outside sourcing. So in that fourth company, we bought maybe 20-30% of the parts from China. Okay, fourth company we bought from that. So that's because everything has become a little bit expensive here, hard to find. There is cheaper, their quality is good. So after fourth company, then there was a lull period that I didn't do any medical devices, and then I got restarted. The lot of things were bought from China and assembled here. So that's I guess the fifth venture. It's not a company. It's just I did it as a consulting thing, and then the next one is still in the paper and pencil form right now. So
Wonderful. Thank you. You've received many notable awards in your career, including a Lifetime Achievement Award from the President of Sri Lanka, the Vidya Jyoti Award for Scientific and Technological Advancements, and the Ada Dharana Sri Lankan Global Innovator of the Year. Can you talk about your experiences in receiving these awards?
well, I don't know what experiences you feel good when you get an award, and the most important one was the Vidya Jyoti Award. It's in the history of the country, I think like 30 or 40 people received it, but only like 10 people are alive. The rest are past. They received it in the 1930s, 40s, something like that. But about 10 to 12 people are still alive, those who got it. It's the most prestigious award in Sri Lanka. Then I got these other awards. I also got the award from United Nations Citizen of the Year award, which I think was something I really appreciate. So awards are given, I guess, people get to know you and then they say, oh my God, you have done so much. I think you deserve an award. Can I propose your name? And can you give me your CV and this various information? Then I give that CV information. They submit to the whoever is going to give the award, and it goes into a committee, and the committee looks at it and say, okay, let's give award to so and so, so and so, so and so, and then you get a call or email saying we are chosen you to give the award. It will be on such a day. Please come. So let's go and get the award. So that's awards are like that. I mean, it is definitely. I appreciate all the recognition that people have given. I am when I go to Sri Lanka. I on the average I give 6 to 8 speeches. If I go to like last December, I gave the convocation speech. It's called graduation in America. Graduation speech in one of the universities. They also gave me an award, and then I gave another speech. Total of 8 speeches in different universities. I gave a speech at National Science Foundation. I gave a talk at the Sri Lankan FDA, the FDA equivalent of Sri Lanka. I gave one. So likewise, people invite you to give. And over here also, in the US also, people who have something like that, they say, hey, can you come and give a talk? So I go and give a talk. So in all these talks, I talk about education, the need for effective education to train the young people to be able to get on their own, become entrepreneurs, think on their own, come up with new solutions to various problems. I mean, there are so many things in the world right now today, even here in Houston. There's so many things that if you solve these little problems, then you have a business opportunity, you know. Right? Maybe there is this problem, but I'm not interested in solving that problem because I'm so dedicated to cardiovascular medicine. I don't want to take my time out to go and solve this problem. But maybe there's somebody else who can do it, you know. So that's the thing about awards. Awards are nice, but I'm also the ambassador for science, technology, and innovation for Sri Lanka. These days, haven't done too much because there are a lot of politics going on. But in the past, I had a lot of different events organized both here and in Sri Lanka.
I actually want to ask about that role. Can you speak to your responsibilities and how you worked in the past to link American and Sri Lankan scientists together?
Yeah, so before the pandemic, when people were traveling and it was a very different world at the time. For example, I brought a group of senior university professors. These are like a dean of the faculty of medicine, dean of another faculty of medicine, professor of medicine. So like that, all these high level people to Houston. I took them to Baylor College of Medicine, and I organized a event, a meeting, which lasted like 4 hours, where the dean of medicine at Baylor College of Medicine explained to them, the visiting folks, about how we educate our medical students. What is our curriculum look like? How do we test them? What give an indoctrination of how medicine is taught in the United States, done by one of the top medical schools in the country. As you know, Baylor is like number 6 in this country. So to listen to that from Baylor, from a group of people, medical educators in Sri Lanka, that was fantastic information. Okay. And then from there, I took them to RICE, and RICE, I organized event with your current president on active learning. So we had, if I'm not mistaken, like 6 speakers on active learning, and we had it organized at the design kitchen. Has a little meeting room behind it, so we had it there, and we provided lunch and stuff. RICE provided lunch, and there we were telling them what is active learning, how do you do it. So we did that. Okay. And that's one. There's another event. I brought a whole group of oncologists from Sri Lanka, the very senior level oncologists to some fairly junior oncologists. So there's a whole array of probably about 6 to 8 oncologists, cancer doctors. And I took them to MD Anderson, and they met with various people at MD Anderson and discussed about whatever the area of interest to them. Okay. So the labs, and talk to them and so on. I brought some other academics also to RICE, and we had the event at RICE about, mainly what I want to do was I want to indoctrinate them about this concept of design kitchen. Okay. I mean, I have been in USC and I have been to other various universities. I've been a professor at U of H. Design kitchen, I never saw anywhere else. So Rice is the only place I saw the design kitchen. I said, that's a fantastic idea. Let me tell these people you got to do it. So I brought all the universities has a one organization about the universities called University Grants Commission. They are the ones who manage all the universities, and the chairman of that university is somebody. I brought him, and with him came a whole bunch of university professors, and I took that group to Rice Design Kitchen. So I have taken people to Rice about 3 or 4 times. At one time, the Minister of Health and Minister of Science came to Houston, and I took them to Rice. At the time, your president was the one before. What's the name? Leborn is the president. And we had a meeting with him. He gave us a lunch. So likewise, you know. And then another event. This is very new and upcoming area called personalized medicine. So you are treated based on your genetics. So your treatment is based on your genetics and your gene structure. So with the Texas Medical Center as a whole, I organized. I was one of the people who was in the group organizing it. The Minister of Health in Sri Lanka, myself, WHO. There was some other person. So we, as a group, we organized a conference on personalized medicine, and that was in Sri Lanka. So I had 8 or 9 academics from TMC, Texas Medical Center, travel to Sri Lanka to participate in that. So where all these people, when they gave talks, I also gave a talk, and it's a very successful. I think we had total about 700 participants from all over that Southeast Asia area, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. They also came. So it was done very well. So these are some of the things, and I participate in various meetings on Zoom with counterparts in Sri Lanka about whatever they want to ask me questions about. So that's my job as the ambassador. Now, during the pandemic, everything slowed down. Now after the pandemic, I'm getting started. Now this December, they have asked me to give a talk in one symposium and another talk in one of the graduation ceremonies. And I have about 4 or 5 smaller talks, like small audience talks. The conference big audience talks, like so I'm getting involved in that sense.
Thank you for sharing. Reflecting on your successes, what are the opportunities you've gained in the US that might not have been available to you back in Sri Lanka?
Oh, that's a very good question. So here, when you have an idea, when your idea is realistic and you have some potential, you can take it somewhere. Doesn't matter who you are, that idea is accepted if it has merit. So it's not based on where you come from, who you are, and all those things. So therefore, it's easier to take your idea from concept to practicality in America very well. That's the good part of this. Okay. Now, in those days, I'm talking 25, 30 years ago, it costs less to do it, but now it costs more to do it. So that's a bit of a disadvantage. So in a place like Sri Lanka or India, you may have a great idea, okay? But to take it and sell it to somebody and who says, hey, yeah, that's a great idea, or we should support it and move it and not chopped every time, that's very difficult. Okay. Think about something like WhatsApp. Okay. Why didn't something like WhatsApp didn't happen somewhere else in the world? Okay. Because even if somebody has the WhatsApp concept, it would have been turned down by the people you presented there. Oh no, that's not important. It would turn down. But here you have this idea of WhatsApp. You take it, you build something around it, and then the Facebook see it and say, wow, that's an interesting concept. We can use it. Come and grab it, right? And they make some amount of money, but not a lot of money. They didn't make a lot of money, unfortunately. $15 million. But that's besides the point. Here is, if your idea is good, people will accept it. Okay. And if your idea is not good, people will tell, hey, it's not good because of this, because of this reason. I don't think it is a good idea. But it's not difficult to advance your idea in America. I think it's very difficult to advance the idea in the Western Europe or in India or possibly even in China. Definitely not in Sri Lanka.
Thank you. It's a really interesting perspective. I want to pivot a little bit more into your family and community. So, how important is it to you to teach your children about their ethnic heritage?
So my children were born here. They grew up here. Their grandparents were here when they were little. So they learned quite a bit of the Asian culture from the grandchildren. But as they grew up, so it's very hard to keep them tentacled to this culture. So as they grow up, and they go to school, they graduate, they go to work, and so on. So still keep those tentacles is not easy. But in their heart, they have the essence of the Asian, Sri Lankan, Indian cultural values in their heart. Okay, but it's not as noticeable as if they were growing up in India or Sri Lanka. So you got to take that. There's nothing I can do about that. You just have to accept that. They are both our parents, and they are very good to their kids. They take care of the kids the same way they saw us taking care of them. They are both are good fathers, and they are married to women who are good mothers. So I think in that sense, they have acquired some of our culture. But I have to admit, they have more the Western culture, American culture, than the Sri Lankan culture.
Thank you. Can you talk about any important holidays, cultural or religious, that's important to your family, and how do you celebrate them?
So the important holiday, religious-wise, is called Vesak or Vaisak, and it is in May. It's the day that Buddha was born, and he also died on the same day, and he achieved his enlightenment on the same day, according to history. Okay, I mean I can't say I know that for sure or not. So we kind of celebrate that. We go to the temple, and then every month there is a full moon day that they celebrate. So sometimes we go. We don't go all the time. These are the religious ceremonies that goes on. There's an important religious ceremony coming up next month called the rainy season retreat. So then after the rainy season retreat, there is a big function, big event, and so that next month. So normally we go to that. So we also have the Sri Lankan New Year, like India has their own New Year. It's interesting. I think it's the same day. That Sri Lankan New Year is April 13th. India also celebrates same India 13th, something like that. So that's a day that families get together. We make milk rice, and we basically eat Sri Lankan style food. So so close families or close friends get together on that day. We have community now, about 4,000 plus people, and not everybody knows everybody, but we know a few people, and everybody knows few people. So on these celebrations, we get together and, and then we celebrate that. We have a Buddhist temple here, the Sri Lankan Buddhist temple. We were the one who donated the temple, so we are the founders of the temple, and it's near the Hobby Airport. So, so we have a special place because we are the founders. And recently, one of the monks got ill, so I'm taking care of him. So I go there more often than normal to see him.
Speaking of the temple that your family funded, what was your motivation and dream behind the organization?
Initial motivation was we wanted our kids to grow up in that sort of environment, that culture, that faith. And so, okay, we built some place so we can take them there. On a Sunday, they can learn a little bit of Buddhism. They can get close to some part of the religion and so on. In the beginning, it worked, but as my kids grew up, they did not come back and reconnect. They just on their own. Now, when some occasions, here my younger son has 3 kids, and they sometimes they will go to the temple with the kids and sit down, and then the kids see something happening, but I don't know whether they can actually relate to see what exactly is happening, but it's some exposure. So in that sense, the connection is not super great. I can't say there is no connection. There is some connection, but that connection is a small light thread, not a rope. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Just a couple more questions about your identity and any advice you give. How do you identify yourself ethnically?
Ethnically, I am Sri Lankan origin. So South Asian, Sri Lankan. And I know that this is somewhat difficult for people to understand. We are from everywhere. We started in the bottom of Africa, and then we came up. We came up, and somewhere in the European that area, we split. Some group went west, the rest of the group came the other side to Iran, Iraq, and Turkey, and all that, and then the north of India, and then they came down to India, to Sri Lanka, and then the rest went to Indonesia and those kind of places. So when we look at us, who are we? We are from everywhere. In fact, I did my genetic makeup, the 23andMe, and for most part, my genes are from somewhere else. So I also originated from Africa, and it came up and came all this area like Turkey, Iran, Iraq, that area, and then some part went to Bengal area, West Bengal area, and then so in reality, we all are the same. We all started in some place. So when people ask, where are you from? I obviously say I'm from Sri Lanka, but I'm from everywhere.
Yeah, that's a really valuable way of looking at your identity. Thank you. What do you feel most proud of?
I'm very proud of my family. I'm very proud of my beginnings, my origin, the cultural values that was instilled by my parents as I was growing up, the education I received there. I'm very proud of this education I got in India. And then I'm very proud of my professional achievements that I got in the last 30 plus years. All the inventions I did, the contributions I made, uh, like I was out to lunch with a couple of friends, and so we're talking about things that I do right now. And then they said, "Do you know that I have stents in my in me?" I said, "I didn't know." "Oh, thanks to you, I have two stents." So this is something that you can you feel good about hearing when somebody says that sort of thing. I was in an airplane some time ago. There was a gentleman seated next to me. Somehow this thing came up and conversation, and the guy has a stent. And he was so happy and thankful. He bought drinks for the people around too, me included. So that sort of thing happens. So these moments make you feel it's all worth it. Not the
really
money. Money is, how whatever I eat now, and all these things is no different than whatever the guy down the street eats. But what you carry in your heart uh, is a pleasure that you carry throughout your life.
Yeah, it seems really cool to see the actual real impact that you're having on people around you. Where and when do you feel most at home?
Actually, I'm most at home here in the house and in my work. I mean, I don't have an office these days. I'm about to get an office, but when I had the companies, when I go to my company, I feel at home. This is my home. I feel Houston as my home now because I'm here since '82. So what is that? 42 years, 32 years, 42 years, right? So uh, I feel at home here. Uh, I feel at home with my family and with my friends. So that's where anybody should feel home with your family and with your friends. So,
Do you believe what you consider to be your identity has changed over time?
in a way, yes, it has changed. If I didn't contribute, maybe my identity would be something else. As I was able to contribute and do these various things that has received a lot of recognition, I think my identity has changed. The way I think, the way I feel has changed. And so, yeah, the answer to that question is yes, my identity has changed. I feel differently now than when I was 25 years old. At that time, I didn't know. Now I feel good about what I have done.
Thank you. Sort of wrapping up, is there anything you'd like to add that we have not covered yet?
The most important thing I think is anyone who reads or listens to my story has to feel that that person also has an opportunity to excel. Okay, it's not like, oh, because Dr. Vijay did it, I can do it. No, that's not how it should be. You should feel like he was able to do it. What path did he take in order to achieve these goals? I need to create my own path, not his path, my own path in order to get to where I want to do. And sometimes when you're 25 years old, you don't know where you want to go. And sometimes you get into the train and you don't know where this train is going, like in my case. Okay. So I was on the train platform. There were several trains on the platform. I got into the cardiovascular train, so that's the train I took. I could have gone into the petroleum or some other train, aerospace. I would have gone there. I didn't know that. So I got into that train. So here I am, and but it doesn't matter. Once you get to that train, you have to concentrate, devote yourself, and make sure that you stay focused and dedicate yourself to achieve what you must. There is no place for mediocrity. It's in my mind. I mean, I tell that to my sons too. Of course, they both have done well, but had they not done well, I would have been very upset. I'd say, what? Why not? You got to excel. So, and so that's what I would like anyone who is listening to this story to see. Yeah, you can carve your own path and stay in that path and move to where you have to be, or walk there, or run there.
Thank you so much for sharing your advice. It's very motivational. With that, I'd like to conclude our interview for today. Thank you again, Dr. Wijay, for talking with me. I really enjoyed learning more about your story, and I appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
And thank you, Avdika, for giving me this opportunity to tell my story, and I hope that this is worthwhile story for you to showcase. But thank you very much.